What happens when the world gets turned on its head? We're forced to look inward, perhaps become fearful, sometimes lash out at others. While there are others in the world who don't give up hope because they believe in people. Join me, Kevin Tibbles and Amy Goldberg, for our new podcast, Believe in People, where we meet those who don't give up hope.
Today's Believe in People is designed to give all you parents out there a helping hand. The school year is just underway and, well, it can be a struggle and stressful for the kids.
That's where educator and author Christa Campsall comes in. She's developed a program called My Guide Inside that perhaps can best be described as a stress reliever.
Imagine that, kids managing to learn and learning to manage the pressure. Christa Campsall, welcome to Believe in People.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I love that you're doing a podcast for people with hope. It's great.
Well, thank you. And thank you for being one of those people that has hope. And in fact, you've created My Guide Inside. And before we you explain what that is, would you share with the viewers and listeners what the 3 principles are that are the foundation of your program?
Sure, I'll do my best. Although people, if they're interested, I would advise them to go to sidbanks.com. There's free resources there, and you can hear it from Sydney Banks himself. Why do I say that? He was the first to articulate these timeless principles, and therefore he has the deepest feeling and understanding of them. But the 3 principles are mind, which is universal intelligence, consciousness, which is our ability to be aware, and thought. Thought is the big one because that's where we can where we play the game of life. And when young people and children and young people of any age understand the power of thought in creating the reality we see in the moment, it's life-changing. I know for me, I learned about this when I was 21, obviously many decades ago. And it was really like going from black and white life to switch to color life, to understand how we have that self-determination within us and can choose and make some choices that affect the trajectory we're on.
Do you find that in today's world, the world of the internet over which we're speaking, it's exploded far beyond television and far beyond radio and far beyond the printed press, which is the way the evolution of media has come along. Are young people under more bombardment today than ever before? And is that why it's so important for them to perhaps understand the thought process?
Absolutely. I think it's a complex and fascinating world. I love tech myself, and I really see that it's exponential. It's just going to keep going and going. And like anything, if you have a real sense of self, and we call it My Guide Inside, knowing myself and understanding my world. If you know yourself and if you understand your world, you're standing on solid ground and can, face the challenges and have critical and reflective thinking as needed. You're not going to be, swayed so easily because you're standing on solid ground.
And I imagine, Christa, that must take a village to sort of come to terms with who one is. And I say that because now, when you first then determine or turn on that light switch, which I'm fascinated about, I'd love to hear more about that with a child, then now you have all these other influences. And so how do they not get muddied in a child's thinking? Like, how do they stay strong and true to themselves?
We really teach them about through stories. The My Guide Inside curriculum is all story-based, wonderful stories. And we really teach them how that they have within them access to My Guide Inside, which is our name for wisdom or common sense, and that they can tap into this at any time. And you do it via feeling. If you're feeling upset or frustrated or insecure is really the generic name for it. If you're feeling insecure, you can just, let that sit and let your mind quieten down. So what I mean by mind quieten down, for me, it was huge to understand that I could put my intellect to rest just for a second. And when one does that, the wisdom, the common sense, it becomes available to us, and it guides us in most practical ways. And we sometimes, even with the young children, I shouldn't say sometimes, even with the young children, we always call it an insight. You get a new piece of information, something that will help you determine what your next step is.
Well, are we talking about breathing exercises? Are we talking about some form of meditation? You're making it, or you are sounding as if we're supposed to be looking inward. And I'm wondering, so we're looking inward as children.
Yes.
And children need to be taught how to do that?
We all do it naturally at some times in our life. One of the teens that I taught previously was like, I can recall moments when my common sense and wisdom, was really there for me. But when we teach them, through these stories, and we teach them about the principles, it's kind of condensed and profound, and they really begin to understand what they have available to them. So absolutely looking inward, but not a technique. Absolutely not a technique. No. Just
so is it more like a feeling? Is it like a feeling, Christa?
Yes. Well, what we I was just rereading. We did a 3-year focus group follow-up with the teens that we did a pilot project with. And what they're saying is 3 years later, what they remember and they use every day is that self-awareness piece. And also they have a greater compassion for others. So I'd say it's one key word, which is consciousness, is you just simply notice. Just notice what's happening for you. And then once you notice, then you have a choice. Am I sticking with this thought, or am I going to let it go? That's simple.
Here we are. Here I am, living in a world where I see people staring at telephones, staring at mobile devices, spending their lives in front of a computer screen, TikTok to YouTube, all these kinds of things. All of those things are trying, in a way, perhaps, and this is my judgment here, trying to tell me how to look, what I'm supposed to think, what I'm supposed to eat, who my friends are supposed to be, whether I'm supposed to be suspicious of strangers. I'm being told to do all these things, and you're telling me that there is hope for me, even though I'm not a kid. You're telling me that there is hope for kids because there is a place where they can go to decide for themselves?
Yeah, wisdom and insight will give us that information that we need to navigate our life. We call it resilience, innate resilience, the ability to navigate our own life. Absolutely. And we all know little children, and if we're open to it, a little child can give us some, universal wisdom when they're 2-3 years old, or they can give us a feeling of the universal wisdom and hope. And they're not even saying words. They don't even have language. You just feel it from looking into their eyes or sharing a smile with them. So yes, absolutely. The other thing, Kevin, I'm from the classroom years and years, K to 12. And then I went into special education just for more job opportunities and so on. And why did I do that? Because I had a real feeling for kids who were struggling because of behavior was getting them in trouble. And I found, Kevin, that especially teens who had had a rough go, had had difficult circumstances, and saw themselves as damaged goods. And then from that stance, they were really in a fighting mode with teachers, with anyone, with their, if they had a part-time job or whatever, just because they felt they were damaged. And then once we teach through these stories again, teach that you have within you this universal wisdom that can never be broken or damaged, and you can access it too. You too are worthy of human dignity, and we just stick with it. And of course, I offer a very welcoming and warm classroom atmosphere full of hope and enthusiasm and so on, and compassion as needed. And eventually, one by one, the penny drops. And these young people begin to see, yes, I actually have these deep feelings of peace of mind within me as well. And I can use this to navigate my world. And one more thing about that, Kevin and Amy, is that interesting to me how many young people, once they find this, and they've had a difficult past, how many of them want to go into the helping profession to show other young people that no matter what, you can access this human dignity and peace of mind and happiness.
So, Christa, how does it start? So for those who are really wanting more information about My Guide Inside, how would they go about practicing this or learning or being introduced to this?
Well, I have a very dear friend and colleague, Dr. Bill Pettit. He's a psychiatrist, and he uses the 3 principles solely in his work. And he did a beautiful letter in the teacher's manual saying the importance of the principles. And he's fond of saying that if people were to read the first 4 chapters of this primary level, which is for grades 1 to 3, they'd have everything they need. So I'll just show you. Of course, it's very colorful and attractive, and has really fun activities for kids. The big thing about working with young people, or anyone actually, is you're educating, you're drawing it out, you're giving them an opportunity to discuss and reflect and say for themselves what they know to be true that maybe they weren't even aware of. I can think of working in the middle school, and you have these discussions after a story, and they start saying things, and they kind of like look left and right, and they're like, I didn't know I knew that. But chapter 1, let's learn something new. We put the key points there. You have a guide inside. It is common sense and wisdom. Everyone has this guide. Just look for the feeling. You can trust your guide. It points you the right way. I'll do one more, and then we can stop and see if you want me to do a couple others. Chapter 2, my feelings come from thought. This one has a story of twin children and how they have their own realities. Chapter 2, let's learn something new. My thought creates my feeling. All my feelings come from thought. I let unwanted thoughts pass by, and well-being is present. I'm going to say that again. I let unwanted thoughts pass by, and well-being is present. Isn't that beautiful for kids to realize that? It's that simple.
Oh, it really
and
is.
People, really, really simple. I mean, I've made a book, and it's for children, grades 1 to 3. It's 60 pages. But really, it's very, very simple. And why do us intellectual people overlook it? Oh, simplicity. Who wants that? But Einstein knew that the answer is in simplicity. You keep going from the complex down, down, down to the simplicity. And that's where the power is. That's where the truth is. So I could read a couple.
I wanted to just interject. I was going to say that I spent a majority of my career interviewing children and children in all sorts of situations, either children in war war zones, children in trauma, or regular kids in the school down the street. And as an adult, I often was flabbergasted by what I was told. I was often totally inspired by what a child would say, overcome with joy just by the expression on a child's face. And in order to in witnessing this thought process that presumably you're describing for us today, in witnessing this take place, the facial expressions, the should I say it or not, or the fact that some kids just blurt it out and say it as soon as, I guess what I'm trying to describe is innocence. I don't know,
Yes.
and how quickly children seem to lose that. I'm kind of inspired by listening to you talk to me about how children can actually turn that into a little gem of their own and something to keep inside forever.
Absolutely. And whatever the age, I'm a teacher and I've worked in classrooms with young children, but I'm also a grandma and have a 15-year-old, 12, 11, and 8-year-old grandkids. And to give them this gift of drawing out what's already within them and being present with them. I'm not all day long talking 3 principles. I'm sometimes talking, skateboarding or a game they love or whatever, but being present and just valuing this child and drawing it out of them. It literally does, because we are their reflection. They trust us. Once they see we're on their side, they're going to trust what we have to say. We're the teachers. They're used to being guided. So it's very simple. It's very humbling, and like you say, inspiring and joyful to see how children can tap into this, and then they have it for themselves forever. We all have challenges. We all face loss and separation, every single human on earth. But when we have a sense of self and of the peace and love within us, we can begin to navigate our world. And sometimes our common sense will, guide us to get help and support from an adult. Sometimes our common sense gives us an insight where we know exactly what to do on the playground. I think the big thing I'd like to teach kids is that obviously I value the intellect. I'm very interested in kids earning their high school diploma while I'm working with them and then going on for beautiful careers. But the idea is to synchronize this wisdom and the intellect. Synchronize it, use it together. And then it makes life really interesting and fascinating, because we're all lifelong learners. We're all students of life. And if we're open to it, the mysteries of life keep unfolding and make life interesting.
And to that point, Christa, then what is it? Why don't more schools adopt this kind of learning? Why does there seem to be a disconnect with the type of learning that kids are gathering now?
Well, it's a quiet revolution. I've been doing
very
this
quiet,
work.
very quiet,
very quiet. I've been doing this work since 1975, when I was still a student at the University of British Columbia. And teachers are busy. Those who, if you have a feeling of hope and share that, and you love your students, they feel that, and they'll join you on a learning journey. So it's quiet work. But I will say, there's the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. There's one that are global, right, from the UN. And there's one in there about quality education, number 4. And there's another one in there about well-being. People are coming to grips with this for sure. Our famous Michael Fullan from Canada, he's known worldwide, and he really gets it. And people are, to different degrees, tapping into this. But I think since the pandemic, it's very, very clear that deep learning is associated with a feeling of well-being. we're not interested. We have, it's kind of funny. Teachers years ago used to say, "But learn this math. You're not going to walk around with a calculator in your pocket." No, I'm going to walk around with a phone that has everything on every library on earth is in my back pocket. So we don't need that type of learning anymore. We have it in our back pocket. What we need are some insights and collaboration and ideas of how to make the world a better place. And when one is living in this feeling of well-being, the biggest thing that teenagers notice and learned is once they stop thinking about themselves constantly, they begin to see what's going on around them and understand their world. And then they have compassion to share for those who are less fortunate than them. And they will readily say, "Oh, I used to just not even give that person the time of day or just dismiss them because, whatever." But now they have this sense of well-being and can actually collaborate and show compassion and real learning. I think it's wonderful.
Well, I think it's wonderful too. And I guess I want to ask, why does this have to be for kids? Because I know a lot of adults around me, perhaps even this one here, who could use a little bit of that too.
Absolutely. So we have something called my teaching the partner who created these with me. One of them, she's from Minnesota and teaches there. She does some courses there, but she's also from the resilience field. She's Kathy Marshall Emerson, director of National Resilience Resource Center out of the U.S. And for decades, like I'm here in Canada on the West Coast in my little idyllic setting and teaching in public school. Kathy is in Minnesota and working through federal government grants, working with educators. And we have amazing evidence. And then even 6 years later, they checked in with these people and the learning was still there, still with them. They're still using it to navigate their lives. So absolutely, you give the keys to the educator and they're off to the races, because it really does come down to this feeling. But Kathy wrote this little discussion booklet, 3 principles, discussion guide for parents. We have the teacher's manual for each level, and it's just about ready. We have a little blended online program that will offer educators for free to help them on their way. Because of course it begins with me. When you believe in people, if I believe in me, then I can believe in those who are in front of me. So absolutely, go ahead, sorry.
And to that point, Christa, that's a powerful statement, to believe in yourself, because if you believe in yourself, you are a much better human being to others. And I think that, and that comes with resiliency. So I'm just wondering, do children teach their parents then? I imagine it's a flip around.
Gosh. Absolutely. It's so fun to have parents of whatever age kid. It's especially charming when it's a kindergarten kid, right? Age 5. What are you teaching? They come in. What are you teaching my kid? I'm learning from my 5-year-old. Or I have an amazing colleague in Africa. His name is Magaga. He's a teacher leader there. And it's his daughter, Benter, who's 8 years old, who asked to have some Zoom classes with me to go through the books. And she is teaching father, who's an education expert. He's just really inspired by what she's learning and able to share. Now that she knows that it's available to her, rest assured, she's using it. For teenagers also, of course, in special education, by the time you get to high school, the parents can become understandably angry, frustrated, and afraid if they have a child with special needs and like, what the heck? What's going to happen? We just have a few years left here. And to be able to in special ed, I have the luxury of having actual meetings with parents and can schedule them regularly if I see a need, and to teach the parents the same things as the kids. It's really powerful for them to leave, to come in angry as can be, and I understand that, but to leave my office with a feeling of hope. There you go. There's that hope again. That's the start. What you're doing in this podcast is so powerful. It starts with hope.
I was going to ask you a challenging question because we are living in secular times. Studies everywhere show that people are becoming more and more secular and not attending churches, for example. The percentage of people attending church is decreasing. And church used to be, in many ways, the place where you would go to get your moral compass. Perhaps the church was the guide inside in a way that the church teaches those things. Jesus loves me, all the way up to what have you. Are you replacing that?
No, not at all. I'm here in Canada, and public school and freedom of religion and all that. This, I'm so pleased to say, is spiritual wellness. In our British Columbia guidelines, we now have the term spiritual wellness in the curriculum guidelines, which is powerful and beautiful. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. If you have a religion, I respect all. I'm not going to join a religion, but I respect a lot of my colleagues that I'm working with in India and Africa and Europe have their own religion. This is about spiritual wellness, about that sense of belonging to something greater than yourself, so that you're not, where do these struggles start with these young people? It starts with a feeling of isolation, which can go into deep, dark places and sometimes tragic ends. When you have spiritual wellness and you have this sense of belonging to something greater than yourself, with that comes a sense of peace of mind and the ability, again, to navigate your life and get support from those who can help you, and to trust those who are willing to help you on your learning journey.
You're not replacing religion. You are teaching people how to. You're teaching people how to know themselves, become full participants.
Absolutely, and of course, the language would overlap, I'm sure. Einstein is a perfect example of that. He's a scientist. Well, it wasn't long before he's in the field of philosophy. The language, I'm sure, might overlap.
And I certainly understand from a religious standpoint, it could be confusing, but it really is all meshed together with understanding.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because we're just going right to the simplest elements, it applies in every domain of life, and it really doesn't butt up against beliefs. I mean, I'm working with people with, I don't know how many cultures. The books have sold in 30 countries, myriad of cultures. We have a myriad of multiple translations of this curriculum. And it's going out where, there's various cultures and various religions, but it's so fundamental and simple. It's not butting up against beliefs or culture.
And I think to that point, Christa, we ask every week our guests why they believe in people, because this is our podcast, Believe in People. The answer may be quite obvious, but we're going to ask you nevertheless. Why do you believe in people?
I think it started with learning a little bit about happiness is within me, and my thought has something to do with the world I'm seeing. Previously, I thought it was all circumstance. It was all out there. And once you see something like this for yourself and have a feeling of peace and love, part of the package, I think, is that it's true for everyone. And if I can be a teacher who draws this out of a child If you think of a child who's disadvantaged with the dull hair and the eyes are dull and, maybe bags under the eyes and just not having all the opportunities that other children may have. And if you can be that person to draw out that wisdom from them and so they can experience their own dignity and joy, it says, I still want my paycheck, but it's better than a paycheck. It really is, to have that feeling of turning someone on to what's within them, their guidance side, so they know themselves and understand their world.
Christa Campsall, thank you so much for joining us on Believe in People. Wonderful stories and
my pleasure
and inspiration.
Yeah, really inspirational. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Take care.
Thank you.
There's all kinds of sayings about, the wisdom of a child and from the mouths of babes and all these kinds of expressions. But there is a real joy, and I can attest to this because I've seen it. There is a real joy in hearing a kid say something that is just so sharp and so real and so innocent. And if there are people like Christa out there helping to bring that out and to give kids the confidence to think and be self-assured, man, that's a miracle, really.
It really is. And Kevin, actually, I want to say you haven't lost that. You still have that childlike innocence.
Oh, so
even though you've been
I'm a big kid,
you've been marred. No, but I really miss the curiosity. I look at children all the time with fascination because I see their curious eyes and they're looking around, and I wonder, wow, when are they going to lose that? Sadly, and then I see that Christa is creating this opportunity that they don't ever have to lose it, and that's why I am so inspired by her program. So, if you love this episode as we did, and you want to be inspired every week, please subscribe to our podcast, Believe in People. Thanks very much.
Be inspired.